Paul Heyman just destroyed a man's entire life, and now that man is sending him a message from behind bars that should make every single one of us fear what happens when Seth Rollins finally gets out. Let that sink in. Seth Rollins is in handcuffs, in a jail cell, not because he's a criminal, not because he went crazy, but because Paul Heyman, the same snake who recruited him, who whispered visions of greatness into his ear, who looked him dead in the eyes and called him family, used him, stabbed him in the back, and then had the nerve to call the police when Seth came looking for what he was owed. And if you think that's wild, wait until you hear what Seth Rollins reportedly said from that holding cell, because this isn't just a wrestling feud anymore. This is personal. This has crossed every line imaginable. And Paul Heyman better pray those jail walls hold forever, because the second Seth Rollins walks free, nothing in this universe is going to be able to stop what's coming. Drop a comment right now if you think Paul Heyman has gone too far this time, and stick with me, because every single second of this video is going to leave your jaw on the floor. Let's go all the way back, because you cannot understand the rage inside Seth Rollins right now without understanding just how deeply Paul Heyman betrayed him. It was the night after WrestleMania 41. Paul Heyman, the most diabolical mind in the history of professional wrestling, approached Seth Rollins with a proposition, a vision, a faction, a promise of power, dominance, and legacy the likes of which WWE had never seen. He told Seth that together, alongside Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed, they would reshape Monday Night Raw in their image. They would control everything. They would be everything. And Seth Rollins, a man who had spent his entire career clawing and scratching for respect, who had bled on every continent for this business, who had carried Raw on his back for years, he believed it. He bought in. He trusted Paul Heyman. He handed that man his loyalty. And for a while, the vision was terrifying. They ran roughshod over Raw. They dismantled opponents. They controlled the narrative. Seth Rollins looked like he had finally found his place at the top of the mountain with people in his corner who had his back. But that's the thing about Paul Heyman. He doesn't build you up because he believes in you. He builds you up because he needs you. And the moment you stop being useful to him, he throws you away like yesterday's newspaper. That's exactly what happened. The vision turned on Seth Rollins, his own faction, his own family, the people he went to war for. They exiled him. They cast him out. And Paul Heyman, the architect of it all, didn't just stand by and watch. He orchestrated it. He brought in Logan Paul and Austin Theory to replace Seth like he was nothing. Like the man who helped build the vision from the ground up was nothing more than a stepping stone. Comment below, have you ever seen a betrayal this calculated in WWE history? Because I haven't. Now here's where things go from bad to absolutely nuclear. Seth Rollins didn't just sit at home and cry about it. That's not who he is. While he was recovering from injury, while the whole world thought he was done, Seth was plotting. Seth was watching. Seth was waiting. And he came back with masks, with shadows, with minions who infiltrated the vision and tore it apart from the inside out. Piece by piece, he dismantled everything Paul Heyman had built. He cost Logan Paul his spot at Elimination Chamber. He cost the vision match after match after match. Then on March 2, 2026, Seth Rollins made his move. The masks came off. The vision's members were scattered. And Paul Heyman was left alone in that ring. Vulnerable. Exposed. The most dangerous talker in wrestling history, standing there with no one to protect him. And Seth Rollins came out and he destroyed him. Steel chair to the back. Crash. The Oracle folded like a cheap suit. Then the stomp. Right on top of Paul Heyman's head. The most devastating finishing move in WWE, delivered with every ounce of rage, every sleepless night, every moment of betrayal fueling it. Heyman was carried out on a stretcher. Cervical spinal contusion. Facial lacerations. Deviated septum. They wheeled him into an ambulance which LA Knight promptly hijacked. Paul Heyman, the most powerful man in WWE, being driven to God knows where by LA Knight. You genuinely cannot script this stuff. The Oracle was broken. The vision was crumbling. Seth Rollins had his revenge. Or so he thought. Because Paul Heyman is not just a manager. Paul Heyman is not just a talker. Paul Heyman is a chess grandmaster, and while Seth was playing checkers thinking the war was over, Heyman had already set up his next move. 3 weeks later. March 23, 2026, Boston, Massachusetts. Paul Heyman walks out to that ring bruised, battered, but that trademark smirk still plastered across his face, and he summons Seth Rollins. He demands Seth show himself. He's baiting him. He's dangling himself out there like bait on a hook. And in the back of the arena, a masked figure climbs up onto the announce table. The mask comes off. It's Seth. Black attire. Cold eyes. The look of a man who has already decided what he's going to do and nothing is going to stop him. But then sirens, flashing lights, police officers surrounding the ring, the Boston Police Department, in full force, storming Monday Night Raw. And Paul Heyman, standing in the center of that ring with the most diabolical smile you have ever seen, holds up a piece of paper. A restraining order. He had been planning this the entire time. While Seth was planning his revenge, while Seth was playing vigilante, Heyman was working the legal system. He weaponized the courts. He used the law as his personal bodyguard. He turned the state of Massachusetts into his enforcer. Seth Rollins snapped. He charged the ring. He got his hands on Heyman one more time, one more punch, one more strike before the police tackled him to the ground, slapped handcuffs on his wrists, and marched him out of that arena in front of thousands of fans and millions watching at home. And as Seth was being escorted out, as he was being taken away in handcuffs, Paul Heyman grabbed that microphone and said the most unforgivable thing we have ever heard on Monday Night Raw. He looked at Seth being dragged away and said, "And I need you to understand how disgusting this was." He said that when Seth's wife divorces him, she'll be married to half the locker room. And then he threatened that someone would call Child Protective Services for Seth's daughter. His daughter. Are you kidding me? The arena went silent. Not because they didn't care. Because they were in shock. Because even by Paul Heyman's standards, even for the most ruthless, calculating, morally bankrupt man in professional wrestling, this crossed a line that should never be crossed. Seth Rollins has a child. A real family. And Paul Heyman just used that child as a weapon. As a punchline. As a threat. Tell me in the comments, has Paul Heyman officially gone too far? Because my hands are shaking writing this script right now. And now we get to the part that the entire wrestling world is talking about right now. Seth Rollins sitting in a jail cell, handcuffed, stripped of his freedom, with Heyman's voice still ringing in his ears, talking about his daughter, reportedly sent a message. A direct, chilling, ice-cold message to Paul Heyman. And this isn't just a wrestling promo. This isn't just trash talk. According to those close to the situation, Seth Rollins' message to Paul Heyman made it crystal clear: the moment he walks out of that holding cell, it will not just be Paul Heyman he's coming for. Not just the Vision. Not just Logan Paul or Austin Theory. He's coming for everything Paul Heyman has ever touched. Everyone Paul Heyman has ever protected. Everyone who has ever stood in his corner. Seth Rollins reportedly said, and these are chilling words, that the night he stomped Heyman's head into the mat was not revenge. That was a warning. And that if Paul Heyman ever speaks about his family again, his wife, his daughter, anyone connected to his blood, then what comes next won't be a wrestling match. It won't be a segment on Monday Night Raw. It will be a reckoning that Paul Heyman will spend the rest of his life trying to recover from. He said Paul Heyman made one mistake above all the others. He could have betrayed Seth. He could have exiled him. He could have humiliated him in front of the world. Seth could have lived with all of that. He had lived with it. He had channeled it into fury and come back stronger. But the moment Paul Heyman put his daughter's name in his mouth, the moment he used an innocent child as ammunition, Seth Rollins said he stopped thinking about wrestling. He stopped thinking about championships and WrestleMania and Monday Night Raw. He started thinking about consequences that have nothing to do with anything that happens inside a WWE ring. That message, raw, unfiltered, terrifying, was passed along through those close to Seth while he sat in that holding cell in Boston. And if you were Paul Heyman, you wouldn't be sleeping tonight. Let's talk about what this means. Because there are layers here that the casual fan might be missing, and this is exactly why you subscribe to Ring Rumble 1, because we break this down differently. Paul Heyman has orchestrated the destruction of many careers. He built Roman Reigns into the tribal chief. He turned Brock Lesnar from a monster into a god. He has been the puppet master behind some of the most consequential storylines in WWE history for over 2 decades. But here is the thing about Paul Heyman that everyone always forgets until it's too late: he weaponizes people's greatest strengths and turns them into weaknesses. He studied Seth Rollins. He knew that Seth's greatest strength is his heart, his passion, his fire, his love for his family. And so that is exactly what he targeted. He didn't try to beat Seth physically. He got Seth arrested. He used the law. He used the system. And then he made it personal, deeply, unforgivably personal, by bringing Seth's family into it. In doing so, Paul Heyman may have just made the single greatest miscalculation of his entire career. Because here's the difference between Seth Rollins and every other person Paul Heyman has ever managed or manipulated. Brock Lesnar is terrifying, but Lesnar is controllable through money and opportunity. Roman Reigns was shaped by legacy and ego. Even CM Punk, for all his brilliance, could be managed through pride. Seth Rollins? When you take away his family, when you threaten his daughter, you don't get a performer. You don't get a WWE superstar. You get something that Paul Heyman has never truly faced before: a man with nothing left to lose and everything to burn down. Seth Rollins from a jail cell is more dangerous than Seth Rollins with a chair. Because right now, in that holding cell, he isn't thinking about what's best for his career. He isn't thinking about WrestleMania 42. He isn't thinking about optics or storylines or what Triple H books for him. He's thinking about Paul Heyman's face. And that should terrify every single person who has ever called themselves an ally of the Vision. Now let's look at where this goes from here, because the road to WrestleMania 42 in Las Vegas is only getting more explosive by the day. Seth Rollins will walk out of that jail cell. That is inevitable. You cannot hold the visionary, the revolutionary, the man who has carried Raw for years, behind bars forever. And the moment he is released, this entire powder keg is going to explode in a way we have not seen in years. The question is, what does Braun Breaker do? Breaker has reportedly been recovering well from his hernia injury, was recently spotted at the WWE Performance Center. Reports are swirling that Breaker could actually go to visit Seth in jail, and if those two men, both burned by the vision, both looking for blood, actually unite, Paul Heyman's worst nightmare becomes reality. Because right now, the vision is gutted. Braun Breaker is injured. Bronson Reed is injured. Heyman himself is nursing serious injuries. All that's left standing are Logan Paul and Austin Theory, and as entertaining as those two are, they are not built to stop a motivated, unhinged, borderline feral Seth Rollins who is fighting for his family's honor. WrestleMania 42. Las Vegas. The entertainment capital of the world. The grandest stage in all of sports entertainment. And somewhere in that city, in front of 80,000 screaming fans, Seth Rollins is going to make Paul Heyman answer for every single lie, every single betrayal, every single word he said about his daughter. You can bet everything you have on that. But before we get there, I need to address something. Because the wrestling community is divided right now on this whole situation. And I want to hear your thoughts. A lot of fans online are saying Paul Heyman crossed a line that even WWE shouldn't touch. That bringing someone's child into a wrestling angle, even fictionally, is uncomfortable, unnecessary, and in poor taste. There are real people on both sides of that screen. Seth Rollins is a real father. And even in the world of sports entertainment, some things feel like they should be off limits. On the other hand, there are fans saying this is the most compelling, emotionally gripping WWE storyline in years. That great storytelling requires you to feel something. That the reason this Heyman-Rollins feud is resonating so deeply is because it feels real. Because it doesn't feel like two characters in a show, it feels like genuine, raw, human fury. Where do you stand? Drop it in the comments. Because this is genuinely a conversation worth having in this community. And here is what I'll say: regardless of where you stand on the taste level of this angle, there is no denying that the emotions it has generated are real. The anger Seth Rollins carries is real. The fire in his eyes when he charged that ring was real. And the message he sent from behind bars? Whether you're watching at home or Paul Heyman is reading this from whatever suite he's hiding in right now, that message carries the weight of a man who has been pushed to the absolute edge. Here's the bottom line, Ring Rumble Nation. Paul Heyman has always been the smartest man in any room he's ever walked into. He has always been 10 steps ahead. He has always found a way to survive, to adapt, to come out on top no matter how impossible the odds looked. But Seth Rollins just sent him a message from a jail cell, and that message wasn't just words. It was a promise. It was a declaration. It was the sound of a man who has moved beyond anger, beyond rage, beyond anything resembling rational thought, and has arrived at a place of absolute cold, calculated, surgical purpose. Paul Heyman built the vision. Paul Heyman recruited Seth Rollins. Paul Heyman handed him the keys to a kingdom and then changed the locks and called the police when Seth came back for what was his. But here's the thing about Seth Rollins that Paul Heyman forgot. Seth Rollins doesn't need a vision. Seth Rollins is the vision. And when he walks out of that jail cell, and he will walk out, the entire world is going to watch what happens to the man who threatened his daughter. What happens to the vision? What happens to everyone who thought they could use Seth Rollins and toss him aside like garbage? WrestleMania 42 is coming. Las Vegas is waiting. And Paul Heyman should be very, very afraid. That's going to do it for today's video on Ring Rumble 1. If your blood is boiling right now the way mine is, smash that like button, share this video with every wrestling fan you know, and drop a comment telling me what you think Seth does to Paul Heyman the moment he's a free man. Also, do you think Paul Heyman genuinely crossed the line by bringing Seth's daughter into this? Let me know below. This community has the best takes in the game, and I read every single comment. Subscribe to Ring Rumble 1 if you aren't already, because as WrestleMania 42 gets closer, this channel is going to be your only destination for the hottest WWE breakdowns on the internet. I'll see you in the next one. Don't let Paul Heyman sleep tonight.